The ACC has finally made a move to keep up with other conferences in the NCAA by adding Cal, Stanford, and SMU to their conference. There's been a lot of drama leading up to this and a lot of speculation for what's to come, so I just wanted to go over it all and figure out what the heck is going on and where are we heading. This is the tail end, or what I hope is the tail end, of a snowball effect that got started last year when USC and UCLA announced that they would be entering the Big Ten. It came completely out of nowhere. USC and UCLA just up and left for the Big Ten, a conference full of Midwest teams, and Southern California is now a part of it. And so that made everything a little bit shaky for the Pac-12 because that was kind of two of their biggest brands leaving for the Big Ten. And they didn't stop there. Oregon and the University of Washington announced that they would join the Big Ten too. So now that's even two more really big programs that went to the Big Ten. But then the Big 12 was like, hey, I want some of that action. So they got Arizona State, and Utah. They already had Colorado coming, so they're like, might as well. The Big 12, all of a sudden, who people were a little bit scared that might be struggling, is suddenly a super conference with all these really big teams. So now everyone's looking at the ACC. They were the only Power 5 conference to do absolutely nothing and not be affected by it. They were kind of just isolating themselves. But at this point, they got to do something, man. Like, Florida State has been complaining so much about wanting to leave because they're not making enough money, which is like kind of valid. The ACC network deal that the ACC got with ESPN was really bad, where the other conferences are just leaps and bounds ahead of the ACC. But Florida State is kind of being a little bit bummy about it. They're like, yeah, us and Clemson, we're like the same. Clemson has won multiple national championships. Florida State hasn't done anything since Jameis Winston. Anyways, Florida State wants to leave. Clemson might leave with them. Everything's a little bit shaky right now. The ACC is like, we got to do something. And so now there's 4 teams left in the Pac-12, if you've been keeping count. So we have Stanford, Cal, Washington State, and Oregon State. Cal and Stanford are the two much bigger programs. They have a lot more prestige. They're in one of the biggest cities near San Francisco, San Jose, in the Bay Area, and they're also two of the most accomplished programs. Stanford has won 134 NCAA national championships across all their sports. Now, granted, most of those are just in tennis and water polo, but it's still a lot. Cal's kind of the same story. They have a bunch of championships over the years, but it's mostly in swimming and rowing and water polo. And then, this is kind of the funniest part of this whole story, is SMU gets on the mix. And how do they do that? George W. Bush. I'm not making this up. He was like the main guy lobbying for SMU. Now, obviously, it wasn't his idea. It wasn't his idea to just walk up to the ACC and say, hey, let us in. But, I don't know, it's just kind of funny that him and Condi Rice are like involving themselves in college football. It's just kind of silly to me. And so then the ACC is like, well, we got to do something. So these are kind of our best options right now. There weren't really all that many schools on the East Coast that they considered for more than a moment. So they started talking. And it kind of came to a halt with 4 teams not wanting to say yes. So it was UNC, NC State, Clemson, and Florida State. They needed 12 out of 15 votes. They had 11. So they only needed one more vote. And I don't think that the rest of the conference was going to let it slide. They were just going to keep talking until one of them folded. And then my alma mater folded. And, you know, he's very happy about it, or at least he's acting like he is, that these schools are going to make our program so much better, which kind of a stretch, but we're going to let it slide. So I'm going to defend him maybe for just a couple seconds and look at how this actually could benefit us as an ACC fan myself. Now, like I said before, Stanford and Cal are like in one of the biggest metro areas in the US, which is very far away from the East Coast. So that just adds a whole entire new market to the ACC's brand. Same thing with SMU. They're located in Dallas, huge city, I think the 4th biggest city in America. So That shouldn't be understated. They're going to bring in a lot of money for the conference in terms of viewership. And SMU actually isn't even taking any of this money. They agreed to be in the conference for free. Like, they don't even want any of the money. They just love football, man. They're just relying on all their boosters that have oil money or something, I don't know, to keep their program alive, and we're just going to hope it works out. I think the other good thing about this move is that with the addition of Stanford and Cal, this kind of solidifies ACC as like the conference to compete in if you're not a football school. The ACC is going to be absolutely cracked at swimming. Do you know how, like, nobody is touching us? Florida and Texas maybe, everyone else, nothing compared to the combination of Stanford, Cal, and NC State. Those are like 3 out of the top 5 programs. I don't know why I know so much about swimming. Maybe it's just because my school is good at it and then I keep up with it. But I know that those are 3 of the most accomplished programs, and it's pretty sick. The ACC is also really good at other sports that nobody cares about. UNC has like the best field hockey program. Tennis is also going to be a big one. With UNC, NC State was actually really good this past year. Again, I only know that because I went to NC State. Stanford, obviously really good. So for all those small sports, this is good. It also might help recruiting a little bit. You can now tell all these players that have grown up their whole entire life on the East Coast, hey, we take a trip to California every now and then, or we go to Texas every now and then. Why don't you join us? That would be fun. Don't join the SEC where like you get to go to Starksville, Mississippi once a year. Who wants to go there? That's stupid. It also helps these teams recruiting players in California because now all these California players are watching all these East Coast schools when they come to their town. Probably not going to be a huge influence, but it might be something. You know, it might be something. But with that being said, it now makes recruiting really, really hard for Stanford and Cal because now you have to tell all these players like, like every other week we're on the other side of the country, so you're just going to be constantly in jet lag. It's going to feel like playing at 8 a.m. when we have a noon game in Virginia. So might be kind of iffy there. It's also going to be really tough on the players and coaches having to travel that much for non-revenue sports. Like, imagine how many games baseball plays and how often they're going to have to travel for that. Like, they're going to have midweek games every single week on the other side of the country. These kids are in college. Like, they got classes and stuff to do. They don't need to be on a plane that much. And it's going to be really expensive for these athletic programs to fly their teams back and forth so much. I think this move also just like exposes the weaknesses of the ACC because this was so very clearly a last-ditch effort where the ACC had to do something and, oh, look, the best teams are on the other side of the country. I guess that's our only option. And so they went with that. And it's just really annoying because they're not making future-minded moves. They're just making things that are going to keep them alive for a couple more years. They're not really investing in the long-term future. I think that there were a lot other schools that deserved more attention to expand to, but the ACC's pride in like academic prestige and just in like general culture kept them from adding teams that probably would have helped them in the long run. I think it's schools like App State or Liberty or Coastal Carolina that all have like diehard fans and will sell out crowds and will throw goalposts into a pond that are literally right here in the heart of the ACC. And the ACC didn't want them. It's just it's annoying because they're kind of the future of college football. Cal and Stanford are washed. They haven't done anything in the past 10 years. It's frustrating. And they haven't even tried to, steal schools from other conferences. They could have gone after UCF, but let that slide. They could try to get West Virginia since they have 2 of their biggest rivals with Virginia Tech and Pitt. But they didn't want them. And now they're having to pay the sacrifice and just pick up these 2 random teams on the West Coast. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Washington State and Oregon State. where they've kind of just been left out of it all because they're smaller programs. They're still pretty big, like they're bigger than SMU, so I don't know why we didn't go after them, but that's beyond me. Overall, I think it's like not the best decision, but it's kind of the only decision that they could make at this time. If they did nothing, then Florida State would leave and Clemson would follow, and then they would fall apart just like the Pac-12 did. So they had to do something. So I'm glad that they did that. I just hate that they waited until now to do something that is just going to be tough on everyone. It's going to be tough on me, man. I'm going to have to watch games that have like 11 p.m. kickoffs. This is stupid. Anyways, there's a lot more to this story, going way back beyond just last year. This has been something that has been decades in the making, and there's even decades more worth of changes and realignments that's yet to come. So I'm actually working on a video right now that I'm hoping to get out within a month or two that covers literally everything. So stay tuned for that. I'm working on a lot of projects right now, so hopefully I'll be, posting on a consistent basis. Anyways, stay safe out there. Bye.